Coming up, a 70s classic that had 624 voices that originated from only 3 singers. First of all, the song came from an awkward conversation that the songwriter had with his wife. She was upset that he didn't say I love you often enough. He ended up turning this conversation into arguably the greatest anti-love song ever. And then in the middle of the recording sessions, the band had an idea. It involved having a receptionist recite some of the strangest lyrics ever, and it made this song a bona fide classic. Stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you know all too well that feeling of panic that used to come over you when your cassette tape was being eaten by your boombox, tape all over the place, you're gonna dig this channel. Happened all the time to me. Make sure that you subscribe right now to this channel so that you never miss out on our interviews and the stories behind the songs. Check the box so you know when it's gonna drop any of our videos. You can also check us out on Patreon. We have a Patreon that has additional footage, exclusive videos, and you can become an honorary producer. Check out our merch below as well. We have our Vintage Years collection. So it's time for another episode of our series Number 1 in Our Hearts, where we break down a song that was so exquisite, it should have been a number 1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. I'm Not in Love by 10cc is one of the most brilliant examples of how a song created for art's sake can connect with pop culture in a major way. The story of I'm Not in Love, 10cc's opulent opus, that began in a very unglamorous way at a common humdrum dining table back in England, I believe in 1974. Eric Stewart, co-founder and lead vocalist for 10cc, he was having breakfast with his wife, Gloria. At that moment, the couple had been married for about 9 years. During the meal, Gloria turned to her husband and asked him, "Why don't you tell me you love me that much anymore?" Eric pondered Gloria's question for a second, and then he responded, "If I say that every day, the words are going to lose their meaning, won't they?" "No, they won't," Gloria said, and the couple suspended the topic altogether. Eric would reflect back on the conversation with his wife a short time later when he prepared to write a love song to submit to his 3 friends that completed the quartet that called themselves 10cc. 10cc was an interesting blend of veteran British musicians that merged together after stints with a wide variety of 60s British rock bands. Graham Gouldman was a former member of the Mockingbirds. He wrote hit songs for the Yardbirds, the Hollies, Herman's Hermits as well, before teaming up with multi-instrumentalists Lil Creme and Kevin Godley, who were both highly respected studio musicians. Eric Stewart came from Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders. Come on, baby, let's talk today. Come on, baby, let's play the game of love. Success immediately found the trio of Creme, Stewart, and Godley, who chose Hot Legs as the first name for the group. They had a big splash with Neanderthal Man in 1970. That single sold 2 million copies around the world. It went to number 1 in Germany and Italy. It shot to number 2 in the UK, and it went to number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100 here in the States. Once Gouldman officially came on board, the band did change their name to 10cc. Now, all 4 members of 10cc had great singing voices and alternated performing lead. But Eric Stewart, being the most polished of the bunch, was the group's main vocalist. He and Gouldman were also the primary lyricists for 10cc, while Godley and Creme represented the experimental half of the band. On Wall Street. 10cc were discussing the prospect of composing a love song for their next album, the original soundtrack. Their goal was to challenge themselves artistically and break away from the status quo. As Eric Stewart worked on the lyrics, he went back to that breakfast conversation that he had with his wife where she was hurt that he rarely told her that he loved her. Stewart tried to balance what his wife wanted him to say and how saying it would trivialize how much he truly loved her. At first, he tried an opposite approach, and he sang "I'm not in love," followed by sentences like, "It's because I adore you." But it seemed trite, something Stewart and his bandmates were really trying to avoid. Stewart then settled into a narrative of conflicting emotions, an anti-love song, actually, where someone feels a certain way but is in denial. In Eric's prose, the narrator keeps trying to convince the person he's secretly in love with that he really doesn't care that much, and he tries to convince himself that it's just a passing fancy. So don't forget it. I'm not in love, so don't forget it. It's just a silly phase I'm going through. Brilliant lyric. It's just a silly phase I'm going through. Eric wrote the lyrics in just a few days. Now, as we continue to break down this 70s classic, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Today, I'm wearing kind of my Buddy Holly Morrissey version here. It's one of the best values of Zenni, though, that you can have a pair for every day of the week and not break the bank. You can get 4 to 5 different styles and colors to add some fashion to your life. Go to Zenni.com today and design yours. You're going to love it. Just because I called you up. So getting back to I'm Not in Love, there's a line in verse 3 that goes, I keep your picture up on the wall. It hides a nasty stain that's lying there. I keep your picture up on the wall. That was Eric remembering a crack on his bedroom wall at his parents' house in Manchester. Eric confided that he covered the crack with a photograph of Gloria. It hides a nasty stain that's lying there. Once he had the lyrics down, Eric created a basic melody for the song by strumming chords on his guitar, and then he brought the raw track to Graham Gouldman to help him finish it. Graham's first suggestion was to change the chord structure a bit. Now, try to imagine this. I'm Not in Love was originally intended to be a bossa nova-styled song with a prominent guitar sound. Graham and Eric really liked the song The Girl from Ipanema, so they fashioned I'm Not in Love with a similar vibe. However, Godley and Creme hated the first version of the song, calling it crap, so the group discarded it, and it completely erased the bossa nova-sounding prototype. Now, with Graham playing his original riff on the acoustic guitar, the aborted version sounded something like this. I'm not in love, so don't forget it. Still, the song's chorus, I'm not in love, so don't forget it, it was catchy enough to grab the attention of the studio staff that were milling about. Stewart heard several people around the offices singing his lyrics, randomly, unsolicited. So don't forget it. The studio receptionist and even some of the cleaning crew that were within earshot of the music were singing the song's hook. That's a good thing. It was affirmation for Stewart's gut feeling that there was something there with this tune. He implored the rest of the band to give it another shot. Although Godley felt I'm Not in Love arranged in a bossa nova style was cheesy and unimaginative. He was adamant that if the song was going to work, it needed a radical overhaul, something bigger, more atmospheric, and more evocative. The sound that Godley heard in his head was a wash of voices, a massive choir that was hovering about the music, similar to what he heard in the movie score of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Godley's idea was to create a version of I'm Not in Love with only voices, no instrumentation. Stewart thought that he was referring to the band simply singing the song a cappella, but Godley explained that he imagined something completely different. Forget instruments, forget guitars, and forget drums, Godley proposed. Just voices, like a heavenly choir. Creme thought Godley had an outstanding idea, but he knew a grandiose production like that would be costly, and the band just didn't have that kind of a budget. Lowell suggested a resourceful solution where the band would record the voice parts themselves, incorporating a series of tape loops. It would be cheaper, but it would take much longer to build what they wanted, if it could be done at all. Creme executed a plan to generate a massive choir effect that could be achieved by singing 13 notes in a chromatic scale and recording them into 13 different tape loops. Still with me? For 3 weeks, Stewart recorded Creme, Godley, and Gouldman to the multi-track player just singing a sustained ah, while holding their breath as long as they could. Each note had 16 tracks from just the 3 band members. Because it was a chromatic scale, the voices had a breathy resonance that gave the track a hair-raising euphoria, like the spirituality of a choir singing in a cathedral or a monastery. Each vocal was recorded individually across the multi-track player and then bounced back. The isolated vocal sounded like this. Creme put the tape loops with all the multiplied voices onto a stereo machine out to mic stands, and then the voices were fed to the 16-track machine, eventually producing an estimated 624 voices that they could add to the song's music track as they wished. Stewart followed the wall of voices with a stereo backing track that included an electric piano segment and a little rhythm guitar, both played by Stewart. Godley played a bass drum sound off of a Moog synthesizer. Once the rhythm track for I'm Not in Love was recorded, the band operated the 24 volume faders on the mixing board as it were a keyboard console to create the choir effect that was used in the final mix. To ensure that the vocals were always prevalent in the background of the song to provide constant white noise atmosphere, Stewart placed a long stop of gaffer tape below each of the 24 volume faders to prevent them from accidentally being brought down to zero. To get that mesmerizing, don't get me wrong, don't think you got it made, lower voice, rotating high, low tonal exchange, the main vocal track was overdubbed by a second track with the same vocal part played back at half speed. I'm not in love. That's a lot to take in. Everything was coming along swimmingly for 10cc's magnificent recording, but the band hit a creative wall when it came to inventing something interesting for the song's middle 8 section. Now, struggling for inspiration, the studio door opened with a jolt of serendipity. Kathy Redfern, the 21-year-old receptionist of Strawberry Studios, where 10cc was recording, she answered a phone call on the switchboard that came in for Eric. Kathy walked from her desk and quietly opened the studio door. She didn't want to disturb the guys because she could see that they were intensely focused. So in a soft voice, Kathy said, "Eric, there's a phone call for you." The guys were snapped out of their serious stupor and yelled, "That's it," as Kathy eased her way out of the studio and closed the door. So moments later, Lil Creme came out to the reception area and he told Kathy that they wanted her to record a vocal part for the middle 8 section of I'm Not in Love. The guys wanted her to deliver the part exactly the way that she whispered it, that there was a call on hold for Eric. Kathy nervously declined Creme's invitation. Since the guys were always kidding around, she thought it might be a prank. Plus, Kathy didn't think of herself as a vocalist in any capacity. But not taking no for an answer, Creme picked Kathy up, he threw her over his shoulder, and he carried her back into the studio. Now that Kathy was in the studio with all 4 band members, she could see that they were really serious about what they wanted her to do. The guys told her that it was a love song and that her lines should sound like she was trying to convince her boyfriend to check his emotions and think clearly. Now, originally, the band wanted Kathy to whisper, "Get it together." But they decided that that expression was too harsh, too insensitive. So they changed Kathy's part to the compassionate and comforting, "Be quiet. Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry." That part always freaks me out. Be quiet. Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry. At first, Kathy's delivery wasn't musical enough. After all, she was a rookie. Eric told her to go softer, whisper, get closer to the microphone. Kathy did as Eric instructed, and then she nailed it. Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry. To get the perfect tone for Kathy's affecting hush, the band put a foam pop shield over the Neumann U67 microphone to prevent the mic from picking up any unwanted pops when Kathy got closer to the mic to whisper big boys. After Kathy's memorable contribution to the song, the band overdubbed an 8-bar bass solo from Gouldman, It was unusual to insert a bass guitar solo into a ballad, especially the middle 8, but that unorthodox move added another beautiful atmospheric touch to the recording. To open the bridge, Lowell recorded a piano melody. The slapback stereo echoes that accent the piano, that gave that section a really haunting sound. Lowell Creme came up with one final twist. He brought a children's toy music box. It was made out of plastic. When the string of the toy was pulled, the box played the English nursery rhyme, "Boys and Girls Come Out to Play." To add that to the mix, the band set up 2 mics in the studio about 12 feet apart to maintain the stereo effect of the other elements. And then Creme swung the box over his head between the 2 mics as it played the nursery rhyme. The stunt generated a really eerie sound, shifting from one speaker to the other. On the fade out, Eric sprinkled even more stereo effect on the track to simulate the sound of a person whistling in a tunnel. When 10cc had finally finished recording I'm Not in Love, they would turn the lights off in the studio and quietly listen to their gorgeous, multi-layered artistic masterpiece. As proud as the band was of what they had created, not one of them declared the song to be a pop hit. They weren't thinking in those terms. It was more about feeling the exhilaration of artistic fulfillment. 10cc had accomplished what they had set out to do, to push their music to a new dimension. 10cc took a big chance with the Wall of Voices choir concept. It had never been done that way that they did it. The commercial success that followed I'm Not in Love, that was just the proverbial icing on the cake. I'm Not in Love was the breakout hit in America for 10cc. The song steadily climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1975. In 1976, 10cc delivered their second smash in the US with The Things We Do for Love. That rose to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. In 1978, 10cc had another number 1 single in the UK and Ireland with Dreadlock Holiday. Don't like Jamaica. Oh, no. Following the success of Dreadlock Holiday, Godley and Creme left 10cc to focus on video production, which they did very well. They also patented a guitar modification device they invented called the Gizmo. Godley and Creme teamed up to make some really cool music that was an extension of what they co-created for I'm Not in Love, especially on the duo's lone top 40 hit single, Cry, one of my favorites of that year. Of course, they also went on to direct some of the greatest music videos ever, including Every Breath You Take by the Police. Although there wasn't an official breakup, Stewart and Gouldman worked on other projects and they put 10cc in a holding pattern until the original foursome reunited in 1991 to record the album Meanwhile, that was released in '92. Gloria Stewart, the muse for her husband Eric's conception of I'm Not in Love, cherishes the song that her craving words inspired. When Gloria heard 10cc's I'm Not in Love, she called it beautiful and unforgettable. Contradicting the title of the song that he famously wrote, Eric Stewart is in love, very much in love. I'm not in love. Yeah, I remember the first time that I heard this song as a little kid. I seriously thought there were ghosts in the recording. It scared the heck out of me, especially when the lady says, "Big boys don't cry." Be quiet, big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry. It's become such a haunting song to me over the years, one that's had so much intrigue and mystery. So whenever I listen to it, I make a point of using an amazing pair of headphones and just really taking it in. I swear, I hear something different every time I listen. With 624 voices, how could you not? Leave us a comment about this 70s masterpiece. What are your memories of this truly haunting song? What are your thoughts on the painstaking production? What do you think? Did it deserve to be a #1 hit? Let's have a good discussion below. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe below to be a permanent part of our community. We'd love to have you. Make sure to check out our other content on Patreon. Check out our merch and get your tickets to Professor of Rock Live. Help us keep the music alive. That's always been the idea. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.